The extinction of the dinosaurs at the end of the Cretaceous period marked the end of the Mesozoic Era. The subsequent Cenozoic Era can confidently be called the Age of Mammals. Animals that had long lived in the shadow of enormous prehistoric reptiles quickly filled all the ecological niches left vacant by their disappearance. Although the descendants of dinosaurs and the reptiles that survived the global catastrophe did not immediately relinquish their leading positions, today we'll explore how the modern continents were finally formed and how life evolved on them during the Cenozoic Era, which continues to this day. The Cenozoic Era began approximately 66 million years ago, and we are currently living in this very epoch. Scientists divide it into three geological periods: the Paleogene, Neogene, and Quaternary. Throughout these periods, the planet's climate underwent numerous changes, leading to the emergence of new natural zones, mountains, steppes, and lakes, while seas, oceans, and continents shifted in shape and boundaries. However, the most fascinating changes occurred, as always, in the animal and plant worlds. The most significant achievement of evolution for us has been the emergence of intelligent life on Earth. The climate of the Cenozoic Era. As mentioned earlier, the Paleogene period began 66 million years ago and lasted for about 42 million years. Following a prolonged cooling that marked the end of the age of dinosaurs, the early Paleogene saw a hot and humid climate established across the planet. The average temperature, even in northern latitudes, did not drop below 22 degrees Celsius. Despite a gradual cooling trend, the areas closer to the North Pole remained warm for a considerable time. The glaciers we see today in Greenland and other northern regions formed around 10 million years ago. These temperature changes gradually shaped the climate zones we have on Earth today. Each zone is now characterized by its own seasonal weather patterns, as well as the species of animals and plants that inhabit them. However, at the dawn of the Cenozoic Era, even Greenland was covered in tropical forests. Then, due to widespread cooling, these forests transformed into coniferous ones, and eventually, tundra took their place. Today, the entire surface of this vast island is almost entirely covered by ice. It remains a mystery why the Scandinavian explorers who discovered it in the 10th century referred to the island as Greenland. This name likely originated during a time when the glaciers temporarily retreated due to an interglacial warming. Scientists assert that around this time, Europe was experiencing another climatic maximum. It is well documented that the British Isles were conducive to grape cultivation, with thriving winemaking and agriculture, although such conditions may seem like a fairy tale to the English today. The movement of continents. One of the reasons for the onset of cooling was the emergence of new continents, particularly Antarctica. During the Paleogene period, the separation of Gondwana and Laurasia continued, breaking into the smaller landmasses we recognize today as modern continents. At that time, Europe and North America began to drift apart, while South America had just separated from Australia and Antarctica, which were still moving together. These two southernmost continents split apart around 35 million years ago. Today, Antarctica is a unique place that significantly influences the Earth's climate, but back then, like all other continents, it was covered in tropical forests and home to a diverse range of life. However, another cooling event occurred, and the peaks of Antarctica became capped in snow. With each new snowfall, these caps grew, eventually transforming into massive glaciers that, over millions of years, not only altered the climate across the entire southern hemisphere but also completely covered the continent. Additionally, a cold current surged through the strait formed by the separation of Australia and Antarctica, creating a kind of barrier that intensified the cooling effects of the South Pole. While Antarctica was becoming a planetary-scale refrigerator, Africa began its movement toward the European continent, culminating in a collision about 5 million years ago. The Indian subcontinent, leaving behind a significant landmass off the coast of Africa now known as Madagascar, set off on its journey toward the Asian shores. Upon its arrival at the tectonic plate collision site, the new mountain range of the Himalayas was formed. Overall, it was during this continental drift that many mountain ranges came into existence: the Andes in South America, the Rocky Mountains in North America, and the Alps, Pyrenees, Caucasus, and Pamir in Eurasia. The movement of the continents also split the ancient ocean tethys into smaller, distinct parts. By the end of the Neogene period, only a few inland seas remained: the Black Sea, the Caspian Sea, and the Mediterranean Sea. The remaining waters filled the spaces between the new continents. This redistribution of water and the formation of polar ice caps also caused the uplift of many land areas. As a result, nearly the entire southern part of Eurasia, from the Indian subcontinent to the Apennine Peninsula, rose above sea level. During this period, many islands in the Pacific Ocean were formed, particularly those that now make up Japan. This region is referred to as the East Asian Arc, stretching from the Chukchi Highlands to New Guinea. Many areas within this island arc frequently experience earthquakes due to ongoing tectonic processes in the region. However, other continents are also on the move. We often assume they have always occupied their current positions and will remain there forever. In reality, their drift is negligible within the scope of human existence. To reach their present locations, they had to traverse distances of tens of millions of years. Each shift brought significant changes to the planet's climate and the evolution of life. Plants of the Cenozoic Era. As previously mentioned, the warm and humid climate during much of the Paleogene period supported the growth of tropical jungles across all continents. This was true not only for equatorial regions but also for polar areas. The remains of the trees that thrived there eventually formed vast deposits of lignite. However, as tectonic plates shifted and the climate began to cool, palm trees, sequoias, and fig trees gradually gave way to oaks and yews, followed by pines and other conifers as one moved away from the equator. Most plants of that era were seed-bearing. The emergence of new adaptations allowed for a wider distribution of plants and provided additional protection for seeds until they could find favorable conditions to germinate. It is believed that these changes contributed to the rise of the first primates, and ultimately, humans. The fruits of flowering trees became a primary food source for our distant ancestors, providing a steady supply of nutrition that facilitated their development and progression along the evolutionary ladder. By the end of the Paleogene period, as the climate continued to cool, forests began to disappear, making way for a new climatic zone, the steppes. Vast expanses covered in grassy vegetation emerged on all continents. In these steppes, a new type of plant appeared: grasses. They formed a dense layer of sod and were well adapted to strong winds and other weather conditions. This allowed grasses to quickly occupy large areas and become the dominant plants of the steppe. Their rapid growth spurred the emergence and widespread proliferation of numerous herbivorous mammals and the predators that hunted them. Animal life. The global extinction event that occurred at the boundary between the Mesozoic and Cenozoic eras had the most significant impact on reptiles. A vast number of dinosaurs were unable to adapt to the climatic changes and were ultimately replaced by birds and mammals. However, these serious evolutionary shifts affected more than just the dinosaurs. Throughout the Paleogene and Neogene periods, a remarkable variety of new fish, mollusks, and even single-celled organisms emerged. Among the latter, foraminifera became prominent during the Paleogene. The remnants of their limestone shells were used by ancient Egyptians to construct the pyramids. In the evolution of mollusks during the Paleogene, the emergence of cephalopods stands out. Various species of octopuses, cuttlefish, and squids are thriving in today's seas and oceans. Around the same time, bivalve mollusks and echinoderms, such as the sea urchins that still exist today, also appeared. Competing with the surviving cartilaginous fish, which include sharks and rays, were newly emerged bony fish that possessed fully developed skeletal structures. Descendants of land animals that transitioned to aquatic lifestyles flourished. This group includes all whales, dolphins, and manatees. Despite the extinction of the dinosaurs, many reptile species not only survived the global cooling but also adapted remarkably well to the new living conditions. Among the reptiles that witnessed the age of dinosaurs, crocodiles and turtles continue to thrive today. Many amphibians, such as frogs and giant salamanders, also survived the dinosaurs and lived even in polar regions after the onset of glaciation. For many of these species, the disappearance of the Tethys Ocean was a boon. As a result of environmental changes, numerous isolated bodies of water formed, many of which became true swamps. In these comfortable conditions, amphibians could continue to evolve. Birds of the Cenozoic era were already fully adapted to flight and life in the air. However, some of them, as descendants of dinosaurs, chose to forego these abilities and aimed to become dominant terrestrial predators. This was particularly successful for species in South America. Due to the early separation of this continent, evolution took its own unique path, allowing the flightless birds of the family Phalacroceraceae to occupy the top tiers of the food pyramid. This dominance continued until the emergence of the Isthmus of Panama, which facilitated the migration of mammals from North America that were more advanced in their evolution. Throughout the Cenozoic era, mammals developed in distinctive ways across all continents. At the dawn of the Paleogene period, marsupials replaced the more primitive animals of the dinosaur era. With the separation of Australia and South America from the other continents, these creatures continued to evolve on these landmasses. Today, animals like platypuses, possums, kangaroos, and others still carry their young in distinctive abdominal pouches after birth. More advanced placental mammals had appeared during the age of dinosaurs but were unable to compete with those giant reptiles for dominance in the animal kingdom. Everything changed, however, after the disappearance of these formidable rivals. The presence of fruit-bearing trees and the absence of competition allowed mammals to gradually occupy dominant positions across all ecological niches. With the emergence of grasslands and tundra came the flourishing of hoofed animals. Across the prairies, pampas, and savannas roamed countless herds of antelopes, bison, and horses. This abundance spurred the evolution of large predators such as cats, wolves, and bears. Undoubtedly, the most iconic members of the tundra fauna were the mammoths. These enormous elephants, covered in thick brown fur, inhabited nearly all of Eurasia. After the formation of a land bridge across the Bering Strait, they possibly migrated into North America as well. The Americans had their own giant of that era, the mastodon. A close relative of the mammoth, the mastodon was distinguished by differences in tooth structure. By the beginning of the Quaternary period, which continues to this day, another cooling phase set in. Many animals once again had to adapt to new living conditions. Among these were the distant ancestors of modern humans. Not all the animals mentioned earlier managed to survive these challenges, but the primates did. Today, their descendants are the dominant species across the entire planet. We thank all viewers who have watched this video to the very end. For a deeper dive into the development of life on Earth during other periods, be sure to check out the other videos on our channel.